Yep, building muscle after 50 is exactly the same as building muscle at any age. Your objective is still the same. You lift with enough intensity to create a stimulus worthy of your body saying, yeah, I'm going to adapt and grow. You use progressive overload to continually challenge your muscles to get bigger and stronger. But my question is, how do you know how hard to train? Another thing that you may have come across is that on some days, you're feeling as strong as an ox. You could lift everything. On other days, fatigue has got the better of you and you feel weaker than a light stream of piss. Now, if you're looking at this video and you just go to the gym for the pump because you enjoy it and you love going through the motions and the results don't really matter to you, you need to scroll on to the next video. But if you're serious about building muscle after 50 for more than just the looks, but for longevity and health, because it's the organ of longevity, you better lock yourself into this video, because as per usual, I'm gonna drop some really cool and helpful knowledge for you. Who am I? I'm Psymon H, the naturally jacked 53-year-old. And if you've been following me for some time, you know that when it comes to training, I'm a firm lover of the slow motion, high intensity HIIT training. But this video isn't about that protocol. So if you love full body workouts or any other splits, including the bro split, but you want to optimize your gym time and optimize and get the best out of every workout session, I've got a really cool hack for you. Welcome to auto-regulation training, a super cool protocol that ebbs and flows based on your level of fatigue. You see, most workout programs are based on the assumption that progression is always linear. While that may be true for the novice lifter, who can almost guarantee that every time he steps inside the gym, he's going to get a little bit stronger each and every workout for a set period, the same can't be said for somebody who's been training 2 or 3 years and providing they're using progressive overload, couldn't possibly predict the weights they're going to be using, say, a month from now. For you to fully understand and be able to benefit from auto-regulation training and see how it can benefit you in building muscle after 50, you have to understand the core elements that make up this superb program. And that is reps in reserve, intensity of effort, and fatigue. This system is structured around the use of reps in reserve as a tool to measure the intensity of effort. If you're new to reps in reserve, don't worry. You'll soon be able to get the hang of this convenient way of tracking workout intensity and measuring how hard a set feels and how many more reps you could have achieved to failure. As I said before, you can use this system on almost every training split. Okay, to get auto-regulation bang on working for you so you can build more muscle after 50, there's a few things you have to do. The most important thing you have to do is structure your workouts. Don't just go in there thinking, today I feel like doing this. Next week I'll do this because I've heard confusion in the muscle is really good. No, fuck that. You need a structured workout program. So let's imagine that we're going to the gym today. Now for today and the next 4 weeks, we're gonna call that a training block. That training block is gonna consist of a certain amount of exercises for each muscle group, depending on your training split and your volume. Now, you're gonna keep those same exercises throughout that training block. You're not gonna switch and swap it the next time you go in the gym because you don't fancy doing this exercise today. No, what we're trying to do is get bigger and adapt and get stronger on every exercise through a cycle. Now we got that out of the way, you're going to practice basing your training on how many reps are left in reserve for every working set, so that while you're measuring the intensity of effort, you're still able to manage your fatigue over a training cycle. This will be done by having a rep in reserve target for every workout. If you've used reps in reserve before, one of the most significant issues you may have found was coming to grips with how to implement them, mainly if you're used to focusing just on a set number of reps per set. The idea of reps in reserve is an easy concept to understand on paper. For example, You know that 2 reps in reserve means that you keep 2 reps in the tank, 2 reps away from absolute failure. However, in practice, how are you meant to know what 2 reps in reserve actually feels like? More importantly, how do I use this information to create a meaningful training program that's going to help me build muscle after 50? Now, that's a good question, and one that I will answer in just a moment. But before I do that and give you some really good examples of how I would use auto-regulation training to grow muscle after 50, I am going to swerve over to the subject matter of fatigue, because there's a really tight relationship between fatigue and auto-regulation training. Fatigue is a temporary and reversible reduction in producing voluntary force with a muscle due to a previous bout of exercise. It occurs through central and peripheral mechanisms. A number of these fatiguing mechanisms lead to a beneficial effect, such as increased motor unit recruitment during a set or an exercise, while other produces adverse effects, such as decreased motor unit recruitment or impaired post-workout rates of muscle protein synthesis. When you use auto-regulation training, your fatigue is being managed on your performance within a given set. This means that sometimes you lift more when you're feeling like an ox, and sometimes less weight for the same amount of reps per set and reps in reserve, simply because, naturally, you push yourself when you're in an optimal state to perform, and you pull back when you're not. Now, let's get down to business. We're going to start with reps in reserve targets and reps per set. So you have some variables you can control, which will help you develop the skill of rating your performance set by set. You're going to use a reps per set and a reps in reserve target for each working set you perform. This will help you to discover your exertion level during your workout sets. So let's just say that for today's workout, you're going to use 8 reps on every working set, and you're aiming for 2 reps in reserve. So that means that you do 8 reps and you don't want to leave any more or any less than 2 reps in reserve. After the first set of prescribed repetitions have been completed, you assess your performance with a specific 2 reps in reserve in mind. You do this by asking yourself a simple yes or no question after each set. Am I above or below the reps in reserve target? If you undershoot your reps in reserve target, say for example, you could have done another 4 reps to failure after set 1, you will add weight to set number 2. Now, if you overshoot your reps in reserve target, where you have 1 or fewer reps in reserve, you will remove weight for set number 2. You repeat the same process after each set. If after careful consideration, you assess your performance as the same reps in reserve prescribed, i.e. you're no higher or no lower than 2 reps in reserve, you keep the same load for the following set, and you ask yourself the same question again after completing the next set. As the weeks move on, what you thought were 2 reps in reserve on week 1 may eventually feel like 4 or 5 reps in reserve on week 3 or 4. In this scenario, it doesn't matter if you're above or below the 2 reps in reserve target. The main important key is that you measure your performance set after set, so that you're in a position to be able to adjust the weight according to your performance. Okay, stick with me, because here comes the juice. Now we have the confines in which we're working to use auto-regulation training. I'm going to give you a real-time workout example of me using auto-regulation training, I'm using 8 reps per set. I'm going to take you from my warm-up right to my very last set, and I'm aiming for 2 reps in reserve. Okay, now, you can use any rep range you wish, but I want you to be very mindful that if you're using moderate to light weights, remember this, that it's the last 5 repetitions to failure that counts towards hypertrophy. Now, are you ready for this example? Come on, let's go! I start with 2 warm-up sets of 8 reps to gauge my energy levels. This also helps me to select the weight for my very first working set. All I'm focused on for set number 1 is my form, the 8 repetitions, and how many reps I have left in the tank on completion. As soon as the weight hits the floor, I'm assessing my performance with a specific 2 reps in reserve in mind. I do this by asking myself that simple question. It's a yes or no. Am I above or below the 2 reps in reserve target? I rank my first set as having 4 reps in reserve. So on set 2, I up the weight from 90-pound dumbbells to 110-pound dumbbells. After careful consideration, I rank set number 2 as 2 reps in reserve. So for set 3, I keep exactly the same weight. After careful consideration, I rate the third set as 2 reps in reserve also. So after making a mental and physical note, next week, I'll have some numbers to go on. Now, if I'm feeling really super energetic, my energy levels are good, fatigue is under control, what I would do in that situation is after a couple good warm-up sets, I may look at the weight that I finished this week on. I might use that for my first or even second set, and then look at my energy levels and use that same question, that same yes or no question to determine where I go from there. Now, provided that you use the same exercise over a training cycle, what you may find is that your poundage goes up from week 1 to week 2 or 3. Week 4 may be a bit of a struggle when fatigue has accumulated. Now, your increase in poundages could be down to 2 things. 1, it could be very much down to you getting used to what 2 reps in reserve actually feels like. Because for most people, having a very firm understanding of what 2 reps in reserve feels like is going to take a little bit of time. The second reason why your poundage will go up is the obvious one, that providing your sleep's good, your nutrition's on point, and everything else in your life is super, you've got stronger. Now, mister, if you notice on week 2 or even 3 that your strength has decreased, it's time to look at the culprits. Now, here are a few things that you will need to pay attention to. Number 1, the accumulation of fatigue. If you found that your poundage decreases very early on in a training cycle, do the following checks first. Number 1, check your nutrition. Is your nutrition in check? Are you missing meals? Are your calories and proteins set at the correct levels? Do you have enough sodium coming in? How are your fats and how are your carbs? Check your sleep. So you've had an argument with your significant other over a long night, leading to shorter sleep. Something as simple as sleep being a little out of sync could affect your strength levels in the gym and also your ability to recover. Outside stresses. Sometimes life gets in the way of training. Personal, work, and social issues come up, and extra weight adds to the day. If you're prone to stress and consistently find yourself in the thick end of life, take a step back so you can see the pressures that are within your control and the ones that can hinder your training. Stress management is quintessential to building muscle after 50 and keeping cortisol and other stress hormones in check. And the last thing to check, is your workout volume too high? It may be that you surpass the maximum amount of volume you can complete and still be able to recover from. Now, part of your journey is to find out where your limits lay. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say about auto-regulation training is that at every end of a cycle, you need a deload phase. And all a deload phase is simply is you're taking your foot off the gas. 2 reps in reserve isn't the target anymore. For that 1 week, you might go and do the same workout, but you're using 5+ reps in reserve. It's a really good time for your body to slowly get rid of the fatigue accumulation. It's a really good, especially if you're over 50, for helping your tendons and ligaments to catch up, because they get stronger and repair at a slower rate than your muscles. So it's a very good time to let your tendons and ligaments heal. Now, auto-regulation training, in a nutshell, is really good for controlling how hard you train, being able to manage your fatigue, and be able to progress long term. Now, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. And I will leave you with this. Remember that building muscle after 50 isn't just for looks, it's for longevity and a nice, strong and vibrant life. Now, please share. And if you're at this end of the video, man, subscribe for more beast-like tips for building muscle after 50. And until the next time, stay safe. Peace.